right. Welcome back to the Double D Trailers podcast. Today, we're thrilled to have Sam Kennard with us. She's a dynamic figure in the equine industry who has transformed her passion for horses into a career that spans breeding, training, and educating others on equine nutrition and behavior. Sam, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me on. So excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the time. So can you share with us how you first got involved with horses and what drew you to quarter horses specifically?
All right. Yes, absolutely. So I was lucky enough to grow up with horses. My mother shares the passion. And she rode dressage. I decided to take the Western route when I was a little girl. I watched some movie and decided I wanted to run off and be a cowgirl. And I rode a cutting horse. He's a retired cutting horse at a camp. I was probably 9 or 10 years old, and we got to play with cattle. I didn't know what I was doing, but the horse sure knew his job, and I was so impressed by it. I had never been around, performance horse or anything really formally trained besides the English horses, the dressage horses. And so it was a whole new perspective, whole new world. And I discovered reining. I got in with a couple of local trainers and started taking some lessons and just fell head over heels in love with the sport. Obsessed was an understatement. I became fascinated with all the pedigrees and just learning everything that I could about these horses. I'd never seen horses of this caliber, these performance horses. And I wanted to learn everything about it from the time I was 12 years old.
Okay.
And so I started showing. And I had been hanging around this barn every summer where I grew up in Washington State. And I had been hanging out in the barn from the time I was 10 years old. And the head trainer there was very patient with me and would say, okay, go brush this colt, go do this, just get out of my hair. And they finally gave up and hired me because I wouldn't leave. And I worked there and showed for 5 or 6 years.
That's awesome.
And put it on hold, focused on school. I made that decision. I really didn't want to at the time, but I was encouraged to do that. So I did. And it all turned out great. I have zero regrets there. But I couldn't stay away from the horses for long. I moved to Colorado to go to Colorado State University to major in equine science. And I took the money that I had saved up for my first car and I bought a little mare instead. Oh. And then I was bumming rides for half a year.
Wow. Nice.
And that was really how I got into the quarter horses, into the performance horses and the showing. Developed a very strong appreciation for everything that goes into breeding and training horses. Any horse, but horses that are really high quality. I just found it so remarkable how well trained and good-minded they all were. And of course, stunning.
Well, yeah, that's a lot of passion to axe the car purchase and buy a horse. So good for you.
I was determined.
Yeah. And this is just for my own nosiness. How did you come up with the name Brook Creek Equine?
Brooks Creek Road is my street where I grew up in Washington State. It's a very, very small town called Oso. And everything gets named, Brooks Creek something. We have a private family winery, and we call it Brooks Creek Winery. And so it just sort of went along with that personal theme that my family had going. It was something that was near and dear to my heart. That's one of my favorite places to be. And I wanted something unique. I didn't just want to, I don't know. I did it all on before this blew up. If I'd known, I probably would have gone with something that made a bit more sense to people. But yeah, Brooks Creek Equine. I didn't want to call my, say horse training or something like that because I felt like a complete imposter when I was younger trying to make my way, and do this with all these, comparing myself to some really incredible trainers and saying, I'm not at that level. Why would I call myself a trainer?
Right. And that's Brooks with the S.
Yes, with the S.
Nice. All right. I had it without. I like the name. I really do. That's why I asked. So when you're looking at a horse, what do you use to determine whether he or she is worth $10,000 or $250,000? What criteria are you looking there?
I think I'm still learning a little bit of that, to be honest, or at least when you get into the ones where, people are paying $350 plus for them. I can definitely, tell the difference between.
This is $350,000 plus. Nice.
I mean, you'll see look at the solo select sales and some of these phenomenal, prospects and even, embryos going for 80,000. I mean, you name it. When you have horses that they have a whole line of money earners and winners, and they're built great. They have every quality, So you're looking at conformation, you're looking at the pedigree, the performance record, the sire, the dam, as far back as you want to look. And there's also something to be said about just certain individuals. There are stallions that are not going to be the sire of sires. And then there are stallions like Metallic Cat that blew that out of the water. And it depends on a lot of factors. And I'm still learning to train my eye to some things for sure. My goal when I made the decision to buy the mare that I did was she was kind of marketed as a flop of a reiner, in that she didn't make it as far as quickly as they hoped she would. But she was just kind of a little mare, and mentally was a little more of a late bloomer. And she ended up becoming phenomenal. I mean, that was a horse where no is not in her vocabulary. There's not a thing this mare wouldn't do. She's pretty. She's talented. She's super cool. And she's really well bred. So I said, man, I'm looking at all these nice prospects. I don't have, 25, 30K to spend on them. So if I can breed my own and do my research and do a good enough job, I might just be able to make something out of this. And I spent 2 years researching, preparing, saving up, just doing my due diligence. And I'd like to say it paid off, but she's only a year old, so we have a little time left to see.
Nice.
But I'm quite happy with the results.
You mentioned $350,000. What's the most expensive horse you've worked with?
That I've worked with personally, not one that I've trained or ridden, but been around one that sold for $650,000.
Excellent. And any famous folks or celebs you've crossed paths with in that?
I'm trying to think. There's some things like you have a lot of these reiners and cow horse guys that ended up getting featured on Yellowstone, and you have this whole explosion effect from that on the industry, which is really interesting and fascinating to. If I were still in college, I would have done a heck of a research paper on it for my, economics class or something, but the Yellowstone effect. But no real, celebrities, so to speak. I guess there's one or two, I don't pay a lot of attention to that sort of thing.
No, it's all good. It's all good. So you have a degree in equine science. You focus heavily on nutrition, behavior. How does that knowledge translate into your daily routine now with your horses?
It really is everything. I was very fortunate to have a good basis of that knowledge coming into college. And then all of these classes within that program, CSU has a phenomenal equine science program. It's very rigorous and science-based, which I was never good at math and certain sciences. So it was a challenge for me at times, but the hands-on stuff was incredible. And so you're studying nutrition, reproduction, behavior, anatomy, disease, facility management, and taking business classes. So it's extremely well-rounded, and you learn a lot about the industry and all different aspects of it. So I took that knowledge, especially those particular areas of interest, because of how they related. I took that knowledge, and now I like to think of it as a whole horse approach. So if I take on, whether it's a client horse or one that I buy as a personal project, and I can look them top to bottom, look at their feet, look in their mouth, look at their skin, coat, hair, and notice things that maybe someone else isn't going to notice, So if I get a problem horse, if it has a behavioral issue or something, there might be something going on in the soft tissue, in the fascia, and it needs some massage and some stretching. Or it might have, you get a lot of performance horses that get ulcers and have similar, leaky gut and things like that. And if you don't know how to recognize the signs, it's really easy to miss until it becomes a bigger problem. And that's the most common thing that I see is stuff just gets missed.
Yeah. You've worked with so many horses over the years and probably had quite a few that really stick out to you. Do you have anything in particular or an experience that left an impact on you?
I would say there were a couple in different ways. I have a very supportive family, which I'm very fortunate to have. And we purchased a 2-year-old reigning filly by this ranch that I work for, by their stallion, their stud. And this was a horse that ended up, doubling our money on. She turned out fantastic, but I think I only got to sit on this mare twice because I was in high school, and the trainer just didn't want me screwing her up. And looking back on it, I don't blame them because I didn't know what I was doing. And I had this super nice horse and they're showing it for me. It was a neat experience and it was educational because that was when I started really learning about the value of these horses and that, you can make money in the horse industry. You just have to be a little brave about it and kind of jump off the deep end if you really want to do that, because it's not easy. It's quite daunting. And another lesson that stuck out was kind of the opposite side of that spectrum. I took on this client kind of as a favor. She paid me, but it was kind of a favor to do it. And she had this teenage, I think it was a Connemara. It was a broodmare that had been started at some point. She wanted to get this thing riding more. The pony's nickname was U-Turn. And that should have been a warning because this little thing, I don't even remember her actual name. She would spook so bad and she'd be out from under you in a heartbeat. And she ended up taking me through a ditch and dumping me into some thorn bushes over the other side of a fence one time. And that was when I learned that I can get to a certain point in the work that I'm doing that I can say no and I can turn certain people and certain horses down because there's a line for, how much I want to risk as far as my health and safety and certain problems that I don't really feel like dealing with. I've worked with really nice, high quality horses and I've worked with ones that I'd rather not work with again.
Right.
And that's nothing about, being a grade horse or a papered horse. It just comes down to the genetics and the individual and the way that they're raised. That's another thing that's very important to me is when I bred my mare, I wanted to have the nutrition, the handling, everything just exactly how I wanted it and really set this filly up for success. So that was when I really doubled down on learning about nutrition, was actually when I decided to breed that mare. And the early days when she was pregnant, I started listening to podcasts and started working with nutritionists. And even though I was in school and studying the material, it wasn't enough for me. None of it was ever enough. I always wanted to learn more and expand on concepts.
I like it. Last question. With the platform and the influence that you've built, which is quite large, where do you envision yourself headed in the next few years?
I would love to continue focusing what I do. I would love to build the business that I've dreamt about for years. I mean, since I was a little girl, and that's to do a little less of the training, definitely less of the projects, and focus on the breeding side of things. I've been in love with these quarter horses since I was a little girl, and breeding my first homebred, and fortunately that went very well. That just put gas on the fire for me, and I would love to do more of that and expand that operation in the future. I enjoy the training. I enjoy the riding. I'd love to get back into the competitive side of it. I showed for a while, and I showed in reining for around 6 years, and then I showed in the versatility branch horse type stuff throughout college. Got a little more into the cow horse. I definitely have a bit of the cow horse bug, so I would love to gain some experience and some knowledge in that area further, just further expand my skill set.
To our audience, and thank you so much, Sam. You can stay in touch with Sam. You can follow her journey on Instagram, and that's at Brooks Creek Equine. That's Brooks with the S. Or just Google her name. That's what I did. Sam Kennard, Kennard. And I think Google popped up the first 15 positions with your info. So check her out, definitely. Sam, thank you so much.
Thank you, Brad.